I'm Gregory Fedora, and this is the Fedora Files. The Banshee has been a part of Irish folklore and horror stories for hundreds of years. But did you know that Maryland has its own version of this specter that is a harbinger of death? And she seems to be wandering the woods of South Mountain. She is known as the White Woman of South Mountain, and we are going to talk about her today. Before we look at the tale of the White Woman, let's look into the origin of the Banshee from the Old World. According to Irish folklore, the Banshee was a fairy woman, a spirit linked to the realm of the dead. And if you spotted her, you'd be praying for the safety of your family, because it was likely that one of them would be joining her very, very soon. The name Banshee is derived from the Old Irish word for woman of the fairy mound. Her name is connected to the various mounds of earth dotted around the Irish countryside known as tumuli. These tumuli traditionally covered a grave or a number of graves and were said to be the home of the spirits of the dead. So you didn't want to go touching them and disturbing them because, well, that would piss off the dead people. Another name for the Banshee was Little Washerwoman, and it comes from tales of her being sighted washing the blood stains from the clothes of individuals who were soon to die. Which I guess is a nice gesture, kind of like, when your mom said, always wear clean underwear just in case there was an accident. Now, even if you didn't spot her, the Banshee could signal her arrival by shrieking and wailing or as they said, keening, which was a term for mourning in Ireland. And her shrieking was said to be able to shatter glass. So if you think your neighbor's dog is annoying, imagine if they had a pet Banshee. That's a reason to call the cops. The first accounts of the creature date as far back as 1380, and mentions of the Banshee can even be found in some Norman literature from the time. There are similar tales of witch-like creatures signaling impending doom in Scottish and Welsh mythology as well. The Banshee would typically appear in three forms, either as a young maiden, often to lure people towards her with her sweet singing, similar to that of the mermaids and sirens who sang for sailors, or a full-figured matron, or an old wretched crone. Whatever her form, she would be dressed in a gray cloak and her eyes would be permanently red due constantly weeping. She was a predictor of death and would often appear before someone entered a situation where it was unlikely that they would come out alive. There are old tales of battles being abandoned by soldiers because after hearing the wailing in the woods just before tussling with their enemies, they were terrified by the thought of the Banshee signaling their impending death and they would flee. Fleeing soldiers would usually be killed by their enemies, their own armies for desertion, or simply by the elements if they stayed in hiding. And with every death, the legend of the Banshee would grow and grow. Stay and fight and die, or run away and die. It was a lose-lose situation, but the Banshee was batting 1,000. Shrieks from the forest are never pleasant, even in the 21st century with our rational minds. But when a blood-curdling howl is there to welcome you or your loved ones into the arms of death, you can imagine how the Banshee quickly became one of the most feared and featured creatures of Irish folklore. Now spring ahead to the founding of America, and as people began to settle into Maryland, some of these tales came across the pond. Apparently the Banshee decided to hitch a ride and settle into the new world. What better place for a harbinger of death to make her home than South Mountain? Mountain was already the home of various other creatures such as the Snallygaster, Dwayo, Snarlyow, and eventually had its own wizard. So the Banshee would fit right in with the ragtag gang of darkness. When the Banshee made her way to South Mountain, she traded in her robe of gray for a dress of white, and hence she became known as the White Woman. As uncreative as that name is, she was still a terrifying and fearsome specter. There are several stories involving the White Woman roaming South Mountain. Her appearance was very much dreaded, as it was considered a harbinger of death and some other disaster, much like her Irish counterpart. One story is of a girl named Annie and her Uncle Ike. Annie was a simple young mountain girl who lived in a hut with her grandmother and her Uncle Ike. One summer day, she was looking out on the road and she saw the White Woman. The shrouded figure arose from the surface of the road and then seemed to pass through the house. She was said to be weeping as she passed through the walls. She looked mournfully at young Annie and then vanished. 2 days later, Ike died, and not long after, the hut burned to the ground because Ike dying wasn't bad enough. Another time, the Banshee was sighted by a woman who was caring for her 9-day-old grandchild. The baby's mother had already died in childbirth. The lady in white came into the house and was seen bending over the cradle. Shortly thereafter, the baby died. There are a few other tales from the Battle of South Mountain where both Union and Confederate soldiers claimed to hear a woman wailing in the woods. Obviously, many died in the battle, so that was an easy call for the woman in white. Interestingly, there is a report that on July 4th, 1877, the woman in white was seen passing through the home of the Wizard of South Mountain. The next day, Michael Zeidel, the wizard himself, died. There are many other tales of sightings and hearings of the white woman, and anyone who has lived on or near South Mountain is sure to have a tale or two passed down through their families. And as chilling as these tales are, remember, it is not the white woman who kills anyone. She is simply letting you know someone is going to die. Most say that if you see her, it means someone close to you is going to pass. However, if you hear her, it is your own impending death that will occur. So, she is better to be seen than heard. It is also said that she wanders a bit past the confines of South Mountain and has been seen at other locations around the Catoctin Mountains and even up into Pennsylvania. So, if you find yourself on the Appalachian Trail and see a woman in white, take heed and call your loved ones. If, however, you hear her, you probably need to get prayed up. Looks like this is one tale I will be adding to my files. Until next time, stay safe and keep searching.
The Fedora Files. Check out fedoracrt.com today.